So as we've moved into the parami of renunciation, really ultimately about letting go, letting go. And I really encourage us each to kind of see what words work for you as we practice with this. Both Bill and Susan talked about how sometimes the word renunciation can kind of bring some pressure or harshness or a kind of moral heaviness for some of us. So, really see what language invites you into the practice, right? Brings that sense of release, letting go, setting down, letting be, putting out the fire, that coolness, the fire of wanting and desire. Because renunciation really is about looking at our relationship to desire, our addiction to wanting, and that underlying belief that if we just got more, if we are more, if we can get more out of this moment, we'll be happy and protected from the pain and vulnerability of the worldly winds. And so we can, I think, all tend to lean into trying to acquire things, wealth, gadgets, status, beliefs. Lean on that for a sense of stability and comfort and certainty. And this is what the Dhamma really invites us to uproot and challenge. Practice of renunciation really invites us to see and feel into the relief and peace of that letting go. Susan had talked about, right? We really want to feel it for ourselves and to see clearly, set down some of our attachment to desire. And there's a beautiful sutta called the Daniya Sutta that really kind of highlights the practice of renunciation. I'm going to read a little bit. It's sort of a dialogue, almost a poem back and forth between a wealthy cattleman named Daniya and the Buddha. And this really isn't a teaching where the Buddha is good and Daniya is bad. They have very different lives. One a homeowner, a layperson, and the Buddha, a complete renunciate. So Daniya begins. He says, "The rice is cooked, my milking done. I live with my people along the banks of the Mahi. My hut is roofed, my fire lit. So if you want rain, God, go ahead and rain." And so just notice what is there for you as you hear this. The rice is cooked, the milking done, the roof is secure, got a fire going. If you want to rain, rain, God, go ahead and rain. And I know I can really feel the comfort in this. I can kind of smell the rice, that sense of security when all the chores are done. I feel kind of safe and protected in my house. And there's nothing evil in this, right? There's nothing unethical or cruel happening here. And then this is the Buddha's first stanza. "Free from anger, my stubbornness gone. I live for one night along the banks of the Mahi. My hut's roof is open, my fire out. So if you want to rain, rain, God, go ahead and rain." And so again, just kind of notice what's there for you. Imagine yourself maybe being the Buddha, finding a hut for the night, the roof is open, fire's out, it's probably cold. If you want to rain, go ahead and rain. And I notice I have a couple of different responses and reactions. There's one level where there is really actually a lot of fear. That feels pretty vulnerable, unstable, uncertain, unprotected. And part of me would much prefer being in Daniya's home. And then, I can also sense somewhere deep down a kind of awe and reverence and respect for the equanimity that the Buddha is embodying. That comes with his life as a renunciate, right? He's not caught in preference. He's not trying to control his circumstances. And you can feel an incredibly deep peace and freedom there. And so they continue this back and forth for a couple of stanzas. Daniya talks about how there are no bugs in his area, and the cows, they have enough grass to stand in, even if it rains. So if you want to rain, go ahead and rain. And the Buddha responds and says, having crossed over, I've subdued the flood. No need for a raft is to be found. So if you want to rain, rain God, go ahead and rain. And each time they end this way, right? And so we might think about, what is the rain in this sutta? What does it represent? In many ways, I think it's sort of showing us the 8 worldly winds, the truth of change and gain and loss, and the flood of experience constantly occurring at every sense door that we cannot control. Right? The pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And Daniya, in some ways, he's trying to manage that flood to build just a little bit of comfort and stability. And the Buddha really showing this kind of total equanimity, not knowing, non-attachment, not trying to create a sense of ground beneath himself. And then there's this interlude where a great cloud of rain comes down. And Daniya, he's heard what the Buddha has said. And he says, may you be our teacher, great sage. Let's follow the holy life. And it's so important. He doesn't say, I'm going to give up my house and my cows and become an ascetic, which does happen a lot in these stories. He asks the Buddha to be his teacher. And I think this sutta is an invitation to us as lay people, right? Not calling his life evil. It's recognizing his goodness, his work ethic, even his appreciation for what he has and how he cares for it. But it does kind of ask us, like him, to hear the teaching of the Buddha, to have the opportunity to turn toward our relationship and attachment to what we have, in ways we might think that those things could be our doorway to peace and happiness. And the Buddha really showing us ultimately that's not true. It's not fundamentally reliable. And so back to the sutta, when Daniya says, may you be our teacher, Mara hears this. Mara is often depicted in these stories as sort of evil or wicked, but really he just doesn't want anyone to be enlightened, because then he'll be all alone. So he kind of represents the part of our minds and hearts that just kind of doesn't want to do what we need to do to live in line with the Dhamma, right? It's like just our natural resistance to this, that the parts of us that just still want what we want. And so Mara swoops in and he has a little stanza that ends with him saying, a person's delight comes from acquisitions. Since a person with no acquisitions doesn't delight. He's like, acquisitions, this is the way to delight. And I love, this is 2,500 years ago. It's just still the same message we get from our minds and from our culture. Get more, want more. That will make you feel good and safe and a sense of self. And so the Buddha, of course, has his response. He has a stanza that ends with, a person's grief comes from acquisitions, since a person with no acquisitions doesn't grieve. So he really points us to that, the grief, the dukkha that comes from always wanting more. I think about how Bill talked about the agony of wanting his team to win, right? And just to say too, it feels important as we practice this, and in this sutta, the object of our wanting is never the problem, right? If it's the house, the car, the gadget, the job, none of those things is inherently bad. They're the objects of our wanting. And in this practice, it's the wanting and leaning on that. That's what we're trying to shine the light on. And feels connected also to how much we kind of don't like the unknown, right? The unknown of the flood. Of course, we're going to try to build stability and certainty. When I think about being in my house with all the food cooked and the roof intact, it's like I feel like I'm going to be okay, right? I've set everything up. And the Buddha, I think, is just showing us just the possibility, even in a moment, of dwelling peacefully in the unknown. Not knowing when the next meal will come, if it's going to rain or not. We are invited to kind of step into a little bit of discomfort with renunciation in order to experience a deeper knowing, deeper freedom, aligning with the truth of impermanence and no control. Because when we lean on having or what we have, you know how we have to keep shoring that up and defending that, right? It's quite exhausting, whether that's our stuff or our sense of self. And we are at risk of kind of falling into that narrow view where we begin to view others as threatening that, threatening our stability and what we have and our sense of self. We don't remember as easily our interdependence and our connection with all beings and with the earth. And one discussion of this sutta sort of highlighted that, talked about how sometimes people like Daniya, and I include myself in this, we can be very kind and generous when things are going well, when the 8 winds are blowing in our favor, right? But when that shifts, when change occurs and loss occurs, it's much harder to maintain that. And I think this sutta points to how we want to cultivate a more stable mind and heart than that, right? And so the Buddha, I've subdued the flood, no need for a raft, kind of invites us just to look at all the ways and how much energy and time we spend trying to secure the raft, and build the raft, and repair the raft, and hold on to the raft. And not to judge or blame ourselves for that, right? It's like, of course, being with the flood of experience with life as it really is really hard. And so our path of working with this doesn't have to look like the Buddha, right? May not mean we let go of everything and become a monk. Daniya decided to have him be his teacher. And so just kind of invite us each to get curious about what we're willing to let go of or set down in a moment. How can we shine a light on the subtle ways we lean on what we have or wanting more? Bill said kind of like, what are the parts of that that we don't include in our practice, that we don't want to look at? And just that like little unbinding, little setting down bit by bit. So I want to end with a quote by Ajahn Chah that probably many of you have heard. I realized I've heard this quote for years, and I think some part of me kind of kept just not wanting to hear it. Very similar to this sutta. I think about this sutta all the time because I think I am someone so much like Daniya, right? I just love my comfort, my comfy house. And so Ajahn Chah, he says, do everything with a mind that lets go. Don't accept praise or gain or anything else. If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. So thanks for your attention.